Clara was on her knees in the dirt, gasping for breath, her body broken and bleeding. Her torn white blouse clung to her skin, soaked with sweat and blood. Her face was streaked with dust and tears. The hot wind howled across the empty plain, but nothing could cover the sound of her sobs. She was only 26, but in this moment she felt 100 years old. Her ribs ached where boots had struck. Her hip burned where steel had cut. Every inch of her body screamed in agony. Cole and Mason had left her to die. They wanted her land. They wanted to wipe her family name from the frontier. When she refused, when she fought back with everything she had, they beat her until her body gave way. They laughed as she fell. They called her stubborn. They spat on her face before riding off, certain she would never rise again. But Clara had risen. Her legs were weak, but her will was stronger. She staggered through the wilderness, each step driving splinters of pain through her flesh. The sun scorched her back. The ground tore at her knees. But she would not stop. She would not let them win. Her mind replayed the nightmare. Cole's hand shoving her into the dirt. Mason's cruel laugh ringing in her ears. The sound of her blouse tearing. The crushing weight of fists and boots. She had clawed at their faces. She had fought until her nails broke and her blood stained their shirts, but they were stronger. 2 men against 1 woman. No one came to help. Now every bruise was a reminder of her defiance. Every drop of blood was proof she had not surrendered. And yet, alone on this empty plain, she could feel hope slipping away. The world spun around her, her vision blurred, her lips cracked from thirst. She whispered to herself again and again, "Not here. Not like this." But her voice was fading. She dropped to the ground, her knees sinking into the dry grass. Her hands clutched the ragged cloth wrapped around her waist, desperate to keep her dignity intact. Her breathing grew shallow. Her body trembled. Her swollen eye half closed as she looked at the horizon. Then she saw him, a rider in the distance, a horse galloping across the plain. For a heartbeat, she thought the devils had returned to finish her. Her stomach turned to ice. But as the figure drew closer, she saw something she did not expect. Not cruelty, not violence, but concern. The rider stopped. He leapt from his horse and rushed to her side. He was older, his face marked by years of labor under the sun. His voice was deep, urgent. "Hold on. You're safe now." Clara could not trust so easily. Her lips trembled. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Take the cloth off." Ethan froze. He had seen wounds before. He had seen cattle torn apart by wolves, men torn apart by bullets, but nothing prepared him for this. As he lifted the tattered fabric at her waist, his jaw locked tight, his breath caught in his throat. Her body was covered in bruises, cuts, and burns. Every mark told the story of cruelty. Every scar cried for justice. Clara's eyes locked onto his. She was broken, but her spirit burned bright. She was not asking for pity. She was demanding to be believed. The rancher's heart pounded as the desert wind roared around them. And the question that now burned in both their minds was clear. Would he stand by her side and fight for truth? Or would he ride away and let evil reign free? Ethan kept staring at Clara's wounds, his stomach turning heavy. This was no ordinary fight. This was cruelty, plain and simple. He pulled a canteen from his saddle and held it to her lips. Clara drank, water spilling down her chin, her hands shaking as she gripped the metal. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "They tried to take everything. My land, my father's land." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. He had seen greed before. He had seen men kill for a single acre of dirt. But this was different. This was a woman broken down for daring to stand her ground. Clara coughed, her breath uneven. "They said I was nothing, that no law would save me. They wanted me to sign. When I refused, they beat me until I could not stand." Her eyes glistened, not with weakness, but with a fire that refused to die. "I will never give it to them. Never." Ethan placed a rough hand on her shoulder, careful not to touch the bruises. "You're safe now. I won't let them touch you again." The words were steady, but inside his chest his heart pounded. He was just one man, older and tired, but something about Clara's defiance stirred him. She tried to push herself up, wincing in pain. Ethan caught her before she fell. Even beaten, even broken, Clara's spirit was wild as the frontier itself. She muttered through clenched teeth, "They will come back for me. They always do. Ethan helped her onto his horse, steadying her with one arm as he swung up behind. The sun was setting, painting the horizon in red and gold. It should have been beautiful, but all Ethan saw was danger lurking in the shadows. He knew Cole and Mason, men like them, did not forget. They would chase her until they got what they wanted. Clara leaned against him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't even know me. Why would you help?" Ethan's eyes narrowed as he guided the horse toward town. "Because no one deserves what they did to you. And because if men like them keep winning, then this land isn't worth living in." The horse galloped through the tall grass, hooves pounding like drums of war. Ethan felt Clara's weight against him, fragile yet unbroken. He thought of the sheriff, of the law, but also of how easily the law bent in these parts. Sometimes justice needed a firmer hand. As the lights of the small town flickered in the distance, Ethan knew one thing. He was no longer just helping a stranger. He was stepping into a fight that could cost him everything. But what choice did he have? Ethan was leading Clara toward the sheriff's office, hoping the law could give her protection. But before they reached the building, two figures blocked their path outside the saloon. Cole and Mason were waiting. Smug smiles spread across their faces. The street fell silent, townsfolk backing away as trouble brewed in the hot evening air. Ethan had no choice but to push Clara inside, where every eye could see what was about to unfold. Clara pulled Ethan's coat tighter around her bruises, but her eyes still burned with fire. She refused to hide, even beaten. She wanted the world to know she was still standing. Ethan was just about to step outside when the doors of the saloon creaked open. The room went quiet. Cole and Mason strolled in, their smirks spreading like poison. They spotted Clara immediately. "Well, look at that," Mason sneered. "The girl's still breathing." Ethan rose to his feet, fists clenching, ready to shield her. But before he could, Clara stood. Her body swayed, her legs unsteady, yet her eyes locked on the men who had tried to destroy her. Her body begged her to stay down, but pride forced her onto her feet. "You think I'll bow to you?" she shouted, her voice carrying through the saloon. "You'll never take my land." Gasps filled the room. She grabbed a half-empty whiskey bottle from the table and hurled it. It smashed against the wall inches from Mason's head, shards scattering across the floor. The room erupted in chaos. Cole lunged, but Ethan caught him with a hard punch to the jaw. Chairs toppled, men scrambled, the piano player ducked for cover. Mason tried to push past, but Clara stepped forward, planting herself between him and Ethan. Her body shook with exhaustion, yet her voice was steady. She knew she could not win against them, but standing firm meant keeping her dignity alive. "You'll have to go through me." That moment froze everyone in the saloon. A battered young woman, standing tall against two ruthless men. No one laughed now. Even the cowhands at the bar muttered, "She's got more fight than most men around here." The sheriff finally stormed in, rifle in hand. The townsfolk spoke up right away, every witness ready to tell the sheriff exactly what had happened. Within minutes, Cole and Mason were dragged out, cursing and spitting, but no longer smirking. The saloon slowly returned to noise, though every eye stayed fixed on Clara. They had seen something that night. Not weakness, not fear, but the raw courage of a woman who refused to bow. Ethan helped her back to the table, pride burning in his chest. For the first time, he realized Clara was not just someone to protect. She was someone worth standing beside, no matter the cost. Now, before we move deeper into this story, take a moment. If you enjoy these Wild West tales of grit and heart, hit that subscribe button. It helps keep these stories alive for all of us. And while you are here, pour yourself a cup of tea, sit back, and tell me. What time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? The night after the saloon fight, Cole and Mason were dragged in chains through the dusty street. The whole town gathered, whispers spreading like wildfire. Folks leaned on railings, women held their children close, and the old men muttered that justice was finally catching up. The sheriff marched them toward the courthouse, a small wooden building that smelled of pine and sweat. Inside, the benches creaked as townsfolk filled every seat. Ethan sat close to Clara, steadying her when she winced from her bruises. Her chin was high, her eyes clear. She'd been beaten but not broken, and everyone in the room could see it. When the judge entered, silence fell. He was an older man with tired eyes, but there was no mistaking the steel in his voice. Cole Mason, you stand accused of assault, attempted theft, and the intent to drive this young woman off her rightful land. How do you plead? Cole sneered. Not guilty. Mason smirked beside him, confident as ever, but the sheriff stepped forward, his words ringing loud. I saw them in the saloon. I saw this girl stand her ground, and I saw Ethan here defend her. The whole town saw it. The judge turned to Clara. Her hands trembled as she stood, but her voice did not falter. They tried to break me. They wanted me to give up my father's land. I told them no, and I will keep saying no. The crowd murmured, a wave of approval filling the room. For a moment, Cole and Mason's smirks faded. Ethan rose, his voice rough but steady. I have lived in these parts for 55 years. I've seen men fight for water, cattle, gold, but I've never seen a woman fight like this one. If this land means nothing to the law, then what does that struck a chord? The judge leaned back, his gavel in hand. The verdict came swift. Cole and Mason, you are guilty. You will face prison time for your crimes, and this town will remember your names for what you are, cowards who prey on the weak. Applause thundered through the small courthouse. Clara's eyes welled with tears, not from pain but from relief. For the first time since her nightmare began, she felt safe. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. You're free now. They can't hurt you anymore. But as the gavel struck one last time, Clara's heart raced. Justice had been served today. Yes, but what would tomorrow bring for a wounded girl and an aging rancher alone in the wild frontier? When the courthouse emptied and the crowd drifted back to their homes, Clara and Ethan stepped out into the fading light. The sky burned with streaks of orange and gold, the kind of sunset only the West could paint. For the first time in days, Clara took a deep breath without fear clawing at her chest. Ethan walked beside her, silent at first, his boots crunching against the dirt road. Finally, he spoke. You stood taller than any man in there today. Don't ever forget that, Clara smiled faintly, her face still bruised but her spirit shining through. I thought I was alone. Turns out, I wasn't. They reached his horse and paused. The town behind them buzzed with life, but out on the horizon lay the open land, quiet and endless. Ethan looked at her, seeing not just a wounded girl, but a partner in strength. He had spent years believing the West had taken more from him than it ever gave. But in that moment, he realized the land could still offer something back. Hope. Clara placed a hand on his arm. You gave me more than safety. You gave me a reason to keep fighting. The rancher, weathered and worn, felt something stir inside him. It was not the fire of youth, but the steady warmth of purpose. He knew life was fragile, cruel even, but he also knew it could still surprise you with grace. As the two of them rode out together, the town fading behind, Clara leaned against him, not from weakness, but from trust. The West was harsh, yes, but it was also a place where second chances could bloom. And maybe, just maybe, love could rise from the ashes of pain. Their story reminds us of something simple yet powerful, that no matter how broken you feel, you can rise again. That even when the world tries to strip away what is yours, you can stand tall and fight back. And sometimes help comes from where you least expect it. Now I want to ask you, if you'd been in Clara's shoes, would you have found the strength to fight back? And if you had been Ethan, would you have risked your peace to protect a stranger? Before we close this chapter, do me a small favor. If this story touched you, hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss the next tale. It helps more than you know, and it keeps these Wild West stories alive. And while you listen, take a sip of your tea. Sit back and tell me, what time is it where you are? And where are you listening from? Because in the end, stories are not just about the past. They are about us, here and now, finding meaning together.